He protected you by asking for those pledge cards before he called me up to speak to you. We'll revisit that in a few moments. Also, it's not lost on me the irony of the fact that a few months ago I had an opportunity to walk on the roof of the building. And if you actually saw what it looks like directly above here, and especially to the sides, you might actually get to relive the story. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in several months. We're not going to talk about that yet. There's a few things I do want to observe, and I really appreciate the audience with the chapel community in order to do this. Because it's come to my attention in times of leadership, since I've been in leadership with the synagogue, that not everybody knows the way everything works. And it's important to me that everybody does, and that we have transparency and we know what we're facing together. You know, our members have come together on days like this, in particular, since 7506. 80 years of coming here. Whatever else we're doing in our life, we always come together in this moment. And everybody comes from a different direction and from a different perspective, but now more than ever we all know that this is what we need. This is the protection we need. This is the unity in a sharply divided world that we need in order to survive and to pass life's tests. Everybody comes to a moment of realization. When I was a kid, I had an aunt who used to tell me about how bad anti-Semitism is, and I never felt it. I grew up in Memorial in Houston, Texas. Like, what are you talking about, anti-Semitism? Nobody treats me any kind of way. There is somebody from Second Baptist that asked me if I had a tail or if I really... But other than that, there was very little, honestly. And in my perspective on that changed on October 27th, 2018, because that was the day that the news hit about something very close to my heart, because what I knew from my family in Pittsburgh is that my mother was the first female bat mitzvah on a Saturday morning at a conservative shul in Squirrel Hill. That 7 years after that, my parents were married there. That when I went there as a kid to see my grandparents, I saw the Tree of Life that was on the wall, and that place meant something to me. And this was the day, October 27, 2018, that became the site of the deadliest anti-Semitic act of violence in this country. That was still kind of new in 2018 relative to what we have faced since, relative to what we have faced in the last 726 days, where we have a whole new realization, for better and for worse, of what it is to be Jewish, that the Jewish experience is a vulnerable one, and that institutions like this cannot be taken for granted. However, American synagogues, and actually American conservative synagogues in particular, are in crisis. They are facing a crisis. There's a popularly cited poll, many of you may have seen it, from Pew Research, that between the year 2000 and the year 2020, a full over 1/3 of conservative synagogues in the United States folded. Many others had to combine just in order to put a roof over their head. In fact, even Tree of Life, on the day of that massacre, there were 3 different shuls meeting at Tree of Life that day because they couldn't keep roofs over their heads. We are big. We have a beautiful building with an historic marker, but that does not make us immune from what's happening to conservative synagogues in the United States today. Now, research and general awareness suggests that the decline can be attributed to a few factors, some of which are more obvious than others. Secularization of the Jewish population, division in conservative populations, dispersal of Jewish philanthropy. I mean, we're asking for the bonds at the same time as the synagogues, at the same time as the IDF, because we need help from so many different angles, and it's very hard. It's very hard because these other things are in the news every day. This is the thing we actually most take for granted. This roof over our head, this community of togetherness, this is the one that we take for granted. This is actually the thing that brings us together to listen and learn about history, about the history of the Jewish people, about the needs of the Jewish people. And so it's my role to say, as the lay leadership, to encourage you not to take it for granted. Now, the other risks to the modern contemporary conservative synagogue are unpredictable revenue streams, inconsistent revenue streams, and the one that I want to address real quickly, mostly because it's preaching to the choir, I think, and that is a perception of a lack of ROI, a lack of return on investment. Because I will be honest that in my role in the last several months, the number of times that I've heard, like, what do I get for my membership? Like, this is not, you don't get green fees in a cart. This is not a country club. We are not bargaining for something. This is who we are. So the concept of a return on investment, what is the value of my membership? Once the question is asked, I think we already have a problem, right? Because that's not what we're selling. We're not selling anything. We are coming together. We are coming together as a community to support each other in a positive way through Torah as an avenue, additionally, to communal involvement and communal support, safety and unity at a time when it's no longer optional. It has become an essential part of a contemporary living to have a unified community that makes you feel safe somewhere, that you don't have to justify being Jewish. You don't have to justify how you feel. You don't have to be assumed as to what you think because of the category people put you. So, what are we doing about this crisis at Beth Yeshurun? First, I want to point out the things that I think are maybe sometimes taken for granted, but that I find great meaning in, and then I want to talk about some information that I think is just helpful for people to know. First, we cannot take for granted enough how talented the staff and the clergy and what we've remarked on, and what I've noticed the most over the course of the holidays this year is not just the clergy, but also the number of different people, that congregants who come in and participate in the leadership of our shul. Like, Michael Lewis is not clergy. Arthur Nason's not clergy. The ones who have chanted Shakri in the sanctuary the last 2 days are not clergy. They're just very talented and passionate people who want to contribute their time. So both professional staff and lay staff and everybody who participates in this shul, that's why we have what we have. We're lucky. Do not take that for granted. There's no Michael Lewis at other conservative synagogues in Houston. That's just not the way it works. Diversity in membership. We do have a diversity in membership, and we don't all pray the same. We don't all go, and it's very important to be tolerant of this, because that's what's breaking apart a lot of synagogues. A lot of synagogues don't have the ability, because they can only have maybe the facilities or the mind to take one track. And in fact, there's a lot of analysis on this point and how it breaks up conservative synagogues, but not this one, because our sense of community, our sense of togetherness for 80 years, our respect for one another, our leadership together makes it possible. Probably never thought too much about that. I think about it a lot, and it's so important, and it's such a gift that we have. Now, the business of it. So the reality is that, and this is not special here, but in order to survive this membership model problem, so we all know, or maybe you've heard these statistics, that membership dues is not enough. The dues model is broken. I'm sure you've heard some version of this. This is the primary source or the interface or the discussion point. And the reality is that we, like everyone else, have to and have started to move to evolve away from complicated due structures based upon myriad criteria that seem impossible to measure, or looking, at what car people drive, or asking how much, or requiring them or telling them what to do. Because the reality is, generosity doesn't come when you are guilted into it, told you have to do it, or given no choice. That all generosity comes from a choice, which is the parable that Rabbi Horowitz was talking about. You make a choice in your life. Hopefully it's not from something as problematic as something following your head, but the reality is we make that choice. Why do we make that choice? Because we identify with who we are, and that's important to us. So I want to address a few different things. First, I want to acknowledge the fact that there's been some misconception about due structure in the past, and instead of fixing it, we're just starting over. And so we're in the process of studying this, and some of the communications you've gotten have been about this, which is to say that we're going to start over with concepts that don't talk about percentage increases or anything else like that, but acknowledge more general categories and more general things that allow the congregant to make the choice as to how they're going to participate. Now, in doing that, the only way you do that is by having all the information. That doesn't work if everybody's also taking it for granted and asking what's in it for them or what their benefits of membership are, like it's a credit card point system or something. So second, we have to improve our communications. Nobody would brag about the quality of the invoices that you've gotten for due statements from Beth Yeshurun over the years, and we hear that and we want to hear more. If you've got a complaint about it, call, email, especially email. When it's in writing, it lives. And so we want to hear about that because we're trying to fix that and make it really more specific. And what I hope you noticed in July is that from now on, we're not doing this thing where you pay at some point over the year. There's a number of people who pay at very weird times, especially after the year ends and just in time to get their high holiday tickets. There's a number of people who do that. Surprise, surprise. But it's a business. I mean, we have a business aspect of this, and so anybody who runs a business knows that when you receive your income in fits and starts, it causes significant cash flow problems. It causes you have to lean on lines of credit. We do that and everything. So what are we asking everybody to do? We are asking everybody to pay your bill the same way you do, whatever the amount is. I'll talk about that in a second. Whatever the amount is, spread it out over the year, like you would your power bill, or like you would your light bill, or whatever, your cell phone bill. Do it the way this is more convenient for you. It's more convenient for the shul, so that we're not getting a spike of money in August, another spike of money when people need to think about their taxes in December. And so that's the reason why we're asking people to put it on automatic with your credit card, or better yet, with your bank account through ACH transactions, and that's why you're getting that communication. I found that the leading reason people don't know about that is because they don't actually read the emails that come. So reading the emails is also a significant help in achieving this financial stability and understanding. Obviously, it's frustrating when you get asked questions, but whatever. I mean, everybody, you shouldn't have to spend too much time. And the least amount of time you can spend is you fill out one of those ACH forms at the beginning of the year, and you never have to think about it again, except on days like today when you're asked for even more money. And then finally, we are working very hard, and this is something that people think about and ask me about all the time, so I just want you to know we put a particular emphasis on the idea that there are a few dozen unaffiliated families in the day school, and that's not acceptable to me. So we are working very hard to interface with these people and figure out why they're not members of Beth Yisrael. So I want to just very briefly, and I really, really appreciate the indulgence of the time here. I really do, especially on this day. I really want to briefly say, so how do we make this work? Dues has been 48%, just 48% of the money it takes to operate Beth Yisrael. That number used to be in the 60s or 70s, but with declining membership and with inflation going up much faster than our dues, that gap just keeps getting bigger. And that's the reason, obviously, for the crisis. So I want to throw some stats at you. And the purpose for this is to put things in perspective where everybody is. There is no guilt involved with this. This is information. I want to emphasize that because everybody recoils at the idea of being told what to do. Me more than anyone. I can't stand it. So out of the 1,804 member families of Beth Yisrael, the average amount, flat average amount of their dues contribution is $1,974, a little less than $2,000. That's the average amount. But the reality is that's pulled up by a small number of very generous people. Because the median, and for those of you who don't remember that stat stuff, that's like the middle line, 50% more above this line, 50% below. Not amount, but the number of people. So the median amount is 1,260. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's incredible that no matter what, you're going to be a member of the synagogue. It's incredible that no matter what, everybody is accepted here. It's incredible that nobody is pressured about anything. And so I hate that that gets misinterpreted. But it is passed along for this piece of information. That's not sustainable if that's all you're doing. So the point of this time is to communicate the fact that the pro rata, the proportionate share for each one of those families, for each one of those 1,804 families to sustain this is a little more than $3,500, which is obviously considerably more than that 1,900 number. This information is intended for nothing other than for you to look in the mirror. If you're paying what you can afford, you're paying what you can afford. If you're paying a lot of tuition like we were for years, this was really tough. If instead your family is able to do so and you understand the meaning and how important this is to us, then we ask you to close the gap between wherever you are in this $3,500 number that's average. But ultimately the ask is only this, to connect the two dots between how much this means to our community, to each other, and what you're capable of doing. Because the residual benefits are great, because this is the method by which we support other Jewish charities and each other. The other two categories by which we get money that's used to operate Beth Yeshurun, besides there's some operating profit, like in food and such, but as far as the revenue that comes from people, the second one is our fundraisers. Now, the feedback was that people were being asked for money all the time, which is an ironic thing to do in a speech where I'm kind of sort of asking for money. But the reality is that we've listened to this, and there's not going to be this fundraiser, that fundraiser, there's going to be two. And heretofore and forevermore, well, I mean, not forever, but the reality is that we're going to consolidate this to this Chai appeal that's happening right now during high holidays, into a spring fundraiser. I think that people felt like those were one-offs, like when we were celebrating Rabbi Morgan, before that when we had an installation. No, that's always going to be a thing. This year, it was just announced, it's announced today, that this is going to be in March of 2026. It's going to be an observation of the 80th anniversary of Beth Yeshurun as we enter our 80th year. And one of the most incredible things for us to be proud of, that speaks more about our community than almost anything else, is that in 80 years, we've had 4 senior rabbis. And I think Rabbi Strauss has a few years left in him. So the reality is that that's something to celebrate. We're going to celebrate our history through that fundraiser. And so as that approaches, you'll hear a lot about it. But those fundraisers are very, very important, as is the Tzedakah Society, those people who dedicate at least $1,800 to the $1,800 to the Chai appeal, which you guys just did. So I will say, you can always get your card back and put a little more on there. You can go online, it's ongoing. You can add anything you would pledge forward. I wanted to make sure to get this clarified, is cumulative, on top of anything if you already filled out your card. A lot of people do it before now. I'm asking everybody, in line with Rabbi Strauss's idea of being 10% more Jewish. That's a message that belongs more in the sanctuary than in this room. I understand that. But the reality is, it doesn't stop us from being able to provide 10% more dollars. I think if everybody gave 10% more to their Chai appeal, then that would be $440,000 for the shul. That is very important. And then finally, I want you all to just know about the existence, of our legacy program, which, you know, is the idea, obviously, of lifetime giving, of an endowment, of contributing to the endowment, in particular, legacy gifts that can happen through beneficiaries in the IRA, that can happen with your financial planner, that can happen with something in your will, you can happen with cash. Right now, our legacy program has a little bit more than $5 million. It has, depends on what you count, that we're trying to fit those in the right areas, but somewhere between 5 and 7 million committed on top of that. And then, of course, we're aiming for something, and we're going to be developing and communicating this a lot more as we get an intelligent goal as to what we're doing and what we're asking you to do. This is the reality of sustaining what we have, because I find this to be very important, and I've become quite passionate about it, and I know that most of you are as well. You know, the world tests us in many ways, and we need a community like this to pass that test. And I am so grateful for all of you. I'm so grateful for this community. Shana Tova.